Bernie Sanders is currently recovering from essentially an emergency heart repair. He had a blockage that was repaired. Again, not a major procedure, something that millions undergo each year. And he will be fine. His campaign has said he will be in the October debates. Excellent. Even though he is out right now, taking a rest, taking a breather, his first in several years, he has been keeping a magnificent pace, one that I got to be honest, I in no way could keep up with, and that most people would not be able to keep up with. And so he is taking a breather. That's the way I look at it. He had something that was defective that needed to be replaced, kind of like changing a muffler. I look at myself in the exact same way. Just because he's out of it, though, doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the campaigns stop. They're still going on, and the mechanisms of the election are still ticking along, including polling. Polling. Now, we've been hearing that Elizabeth Warren has been surging, and I accept that she's probably been doing well in the polls. I mean, after all, she's been getting like $1 billion free media attention from MSNBC and CNN. But I don't know what that number is in reality. I just know for the most part, she might have gained some ground. I want to talk about the recent polling, Ohio and California. As you know, California has been moved up. So the person who gets California is going to be in a very good position. And I want to talk about Ohio, but I also want to talk about polling on the flip side, meaning the shadow side of polling. The side of polling where you get a number, but you don't necessarily know the context of the number because of the way they did the poll, and you get somewhat of a deceptive reading. It's like if I go and take a test, let's say a lab test, and they tell me that I have cancer, and then I find out a month later, oh, my bad, the thing that the test was evaluating wasn't necessarily the thing that needed to be evaluated in you. And you have somewhat of an elevated number on this, so it gave us a wrong number. Meaning, a poll could be testing the wrong things and give you a result that is somewhat erroneous in regards to what the objective actual world looked like if that election was held today. Let's do an easy one first. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. This is the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, if you dig this content and you find yourself coming back often, please like, share, subscribe. Of course, you can always support through PayPal or Patreon. This content is brought to you by you because YouTube has taken it upon themselves to pretty much demonetize all of these videos. Not bitter. I'm bitter. I'm totally bitter. So first things first. Wish Sanders well. Sanders, I want to say, has my blessing, but I don't necessarily believe in blessing in that way. Maybe conscientious thought, yes. Blessings in the sense of Jesus, no. That said, he has my best wishes. And if I'm being honest, the best wishes of this entire family. On the second part, polling. So this is, I should have put this in airplane mode like I typically do. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Alexi, yes.
There we are. All right, so this is Emerson, Ohio, September 29th, October 2nd. Biden, 29%. Sanders at 27%. Warren at 21%. Now, the reality of it is, this poll looks about right. The deviation on this poll is 5.2%, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. When it's more than 3%, slightly dodgy. It's Emerson. Take it with a grain of salt. However, when you're looking at the various polls across the various states, what you found often was that Sanders, Warren, and Biden were close. Oftentimes, Sanders and Biden being in 1 and 2, with Warren being in third. But there are some areas, some states, where Warren has taken the second place or the lead, especially in some of the early states. I want to say Iowa, and I even want to say New Hampshire, but it's off the top of my head, so take it with a grain of salt. Right now, what I'm looking at is Emerson, Ohio, 2020, Biden, 29, Sanders, 27, Warren, 21. Sanders is within the standard deviation of Biden. Warren is not, which he's close. This part, Sanders continues to hold a strong lead with voters under 30 years old. In Ohio, he captures 52% of this vote. Well, numbers drop significantly with older voters. I want you to keep that in mind because this is true across all of the polls. Every poll that I've ever looked at, this trend has been true. Sanders continues to hold a strong lead with 30-year-olds and under. In Ohio, he captures 52% of that vote, but his numbers drop significantly with older voters. Sanders just receives 4% of the vote total from people over 65 years of age. Biden is the opposite. 49% of voters over 65%, but he only gets 3% of the voters 18 to 29 years of old. Warren competes as an alternative choice with all age groups with no significant variance across their totals across groups. Sanders is holding a majority of his 2016 voters in Ohio as 57% still support him. Now, that's important, right? I mean, in the first election, going back in 2016, when Sanders was running, nobody, for the most part, knew who he was. My family was like, I had no idea who Bernie Sanders was. For him to get his group and to keep that coalition, there were only two people in that race, really, Clinton and Sanders. If he's able to keep 57% of his vote total with 20 other people in the race, I would say that is not that horrible of a tally, of a statistic, of a stat. Here's the other one. So this is California. And this is, what is this, PPI? All right, PPIC. Elizabeth Warren, 23%. Joe Biden, 22%. Sanders, 21%. Let me repeat that. This is California. Three-way lead for first. And what is the deviation on this poll? The PPI is a supposedly decent poll. I don't know if this is one of the ones that the Democrats is including. But let's go to the top. Public Policy Institute of California. That is usually probably at the bottom. All right, as California Democrats draw color, right? Look likely voters. Many Democrats are open to switching allegiances at the early stage of the presidential season and most right the debates. Well, that part we already knew. Okay, but the important part of this poll that I want to get across is this. Three-way lead for first. California. This vote will take place, meaning California has been moved up to March 3rd. If you remember, California, as big of a state as it is, rarely played a huge role in the elections. I mean, after all, it was almost at the very end where somebody got California, and at that point, the vote tally has typically had been wrapped up. All right, 2 states. Now, what I want you to look at also is Monmouth. Now, I did a Monmouth poll that showed Bernie Sanders took the lead. And I went through that poll and I said, wow, this poll is actually a really good poll. This was the poll that I showed you right here. And this goes into, I guess, the third segment that I want to kind of make the point on. All right, this poll came out in August. And it had, let's see. Where is it? All right, right here. Bernie Sanders, 20%. Warren, 20%. Biden, 19%. A massive drop for Joe Biden. And this poll got across that Joe Biden was failing, like falling apart among all demographics. That was a Monmouth poll. And the breakdown of this poll was perfect. I even went through the breakdown. I was like, wow, Joe Biden is taking a hit. Who were the people that this poll talked to? 38% male, 60% female, 31% across all demographics, 53%. Essentially a breakdown with what the population looks like. I had no complaints about the way this poll was done, the methodology, how they were calling people, and the breakdown of the people who answered in this poll. It was a good poll. Now, let's take a look at this one. This is another Monmouth poll. Elizabeth Warren, 28%. Joe Biden, 25%. That's a big jump from 19%. And Sanders, falls 5% to 15% in the vote tally. That's a massive hit for Sanders. So what happened? Look at this. Let's see. Where is it? Right here. Wait a minute. What am I missing? I'm missing the breakdown. Hold on. There's a breakdown in this total because it ended up being where the majority of the people in this poll ended up being like over the age of 70 or something. And I remember doing this poll early on, unless I'm pulling back the wrong one. Let's see. What am I looking for? Oh, here we are. All right. So now with the blur that Sanders tends to get in his polling, meaning over the age of 50 gets essentially loses out. Under the age of 30, he tends to win out. So you get this 28% of the people are 18 to 34. But over 70% of the people are outside of his demographic. And beyond that many being outside of his demographic, well, to be fair, that's not entirely a different skew. So, okay, fair enough. I can't hit him on this. There is a poll that Monmouth did where it ended up being like 70% were above the age of 50. It was a weird result. And people were running with that poll, and perhaps I found the wrong one. So let's keep this video until I can substantiate what I'm saying. If I can find what I was looking for. Right now, Sanders is out. But from a polling standpoint, at the very least in Ohio and California, he's not looking bad. So I'll put both of these at the bottom so you guys can peruse for yourself. Yeah, I'll leave it here. I don't want this one to be long. Like, share, subscribe. Thanks so.